Waking up in a loop. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing you remember your childhood perfectly. The faces, the laughter, even the smell of your old house. But nothing about yesterday. No idea what you ate, what you said, or who just smiled at you. Every conversation feels new. Every day starts from zero. This isn't science fiction. It's a real condition called anterograde amnesia, and it reveals just how extraordinary and fragile memory really is. When the save button stops working, we all forget things sometimes. Car keys, birthdays, passwords that seemed easy to remember. But anterograde amnesia isn't normal forgetfulness. It's as if the brain's save function stops working. You can think clearly, have conversations, even understand complex ideas, but the second something new happens, it slips away. It's like trying to write in wet sand. Every wave of time washes it clean. The brain's librarian, the hippocampus. So what's happening inside the brain when memory fails like this? To understand that, we need to see how memory normally works. Picture your brain as a huge library. Every time something happens, a sound, a sight, a feeling, a book gets written. The hippocampus, a small curved structure deep in your brain, acts as the librarian. It decides which new books get cataloged and which ones get tossed. When the librarian is missing or damaged, the books never make it to the shelves. They pile up temporarily, then vanish. That's anterograde amnesia in action. The present can't become the past. The man known as HM. The most famous story that taught us this came from one man, Henry Mollison, better known as HM. In the early 1950s, Henry suffered from severe epileptic seizures. Doctors tried medication, but nothing worked. Finally, surgeons decided to remove parts of both sides of his medial temporal lobes, including most of his hippocampus, to stop the seizures. The surgery worked. The seizures eased. But Henry woke up to a new problem. He could no longer form lasting memories. Living in the eternal present. Before the operation, he remembered everything from his past, his childhood, his parents, his home. Afterward, every new experience lasted only a few minutes before it disappeared. He could read a magazine, but forget the first page by the time he reached the last. He could meet a doctor, chat pleasantly, and then greet that same doctor again 5 minutes later, as if they were strangers. Imagine living in a world where time constantly resets, where every hello is the first hello. The discovery that changed neuroscience. But here's the fascinating part. Henry wasn't helpless. Although he couldn't remember events, he could still learn skills. Scientists asked him to trace a star by looking in a mirror, a tricky hand-eye test. Each day, he improved, even though he swore he'd never seen the task before. That experiment changed neuroscience forever. It proved that memory isn't one single system. Two paths of memory. There are different kinds of memory, each with its own job. Declarative memory is the one we usually think of. It stores facts, stories, and experiences we can consciously recall. That's the kind Henry lost. Procedural memory handles habits and skills, things like riding a bike or typing on a keyboard. That part of his brain was still working. So even though Henry couldn't tell you he'd practiced a skill, his hands knew it. It's like two parts of the brain learning in parallel, one aware, one silent. The brain's backup systems. Henry's case revealed something extraordinary. Our memories are not stored in one place. They live in networks, some in the hippocampus, others in the cortex, cerebellum, or basal ganglia. When one system fails, the others can still function. That's why someone can lose their history, yet keep their talents. The brain, even when damaged, finds ways to adapt. The musician lost in time, Clive. Years later, another remarkable case deepened this understanding. Clive, a gifted musician and conductor. In the 1980s, Clive contracted a rare brain infection called herpes encephalitis, which severely damaged his hippocampus and nearby areas responsible for storing and forming memories. The result was devastating. Clive lost most of his past memories, a condition known as retrograde amnesia, and he also became unable to form new ones, known as anterograde amnesia. In other words, both his bridge to the past and his path to the future were broken. He can only remember a few seconds at a time. He writes in his diary over and over, "I'm awake for the first time." Moments later, he forgets he ever wrote it. But when Clive sits at a piano, something extraordinary happens. His hands remember everything. He plays beautifully, every time. He can't recall his past, but his music remains untouched. His story shows us that even when memory collapses, the mind can still find islands of strength, skill, emotion, love that survive the storm. Both HM and Clive Waring taught scientists that memory isn't a single story. It's a symphony of systems working together. There's short-term memory, which lasts a few seconds, working memory, which keeps track of what's happening now, and long-term memory, which stores the things that define who we are. In anterograde amnesia, short-term memory still works fine. It's the process of turning short-term into long-term that breaks down. The mind can record, but the data never makes it to storage. What causes the breakdown? So what causes this kind of breakdown? It's not always surgery. Sometimes it's head trauma, stroke, infection, or long-term alcohol abuse that damages the hippocampus. Lack of oxygen during an accident or illness can do it too. What's striking is how delicate this area is. You can lose large sections of brain tissue and still recall your wedding day, but damage a few centimeters of hippocampus and your ability to form new memories disappears completely. This small, seahorse-shaped structure holds the key to remembering life as it happens. How the brain builds memory. When you learn something new, neurons in the hippocampus send electrical signals to one another. They strengthen their connections through a process called long-term potentiation, or LTP. It's like blazing a path through a forest. The more you travel it, the clearer it becomes. When the hippocampus is damaged, those pathways never form properly. The brain can experience the moment, but it can't keep the trail open. That's why new memories fade so quickly in anterograde amnesia. More than just storage. For years, scientists thought memory was just storage, like saving data on a hard drive. Now we know it's far more complex. Memory isn't just about facts, it's about time, identity, and imagination. When you imagine the future, your brain uses the same circuits it uses to recall the past. So when memory formation breaks, people don't just lose events. They lose their sense of continuity. Life becomes a series of disconnected moments, always happening, never accumulating. What the heart still remembers. Yet even in that state, something remarkable survives. Many people with anterograde amnesia still feel emotion. They might not remember a loved one's name, but their body and heart remember the feeling. Clive Waring, for instance, forgets who his wife is, but every time she enters the room, his face lights up with pure joy. His love remains, even without memory. That's because emotional memory lives deeper in the brain, in areas like the amygdala, which often remain untouched. So even when the story of a relationship disappears, the feelings endure. It's a haunting, beautiful reminder that emotion and memory are not the same thing. The future of memory research. Modern science continues to explore how to repair this delicate system. Using brain imaging, researchers can now watch memories being encoded in real time. Some are testing neural implants that mimic the hippocampus's signals, essentially an artificial memory bridge. Others experiment with electrical stimulation or targeted therapies to help the brain rebuild connections. We're still far from a memory chip, but these discoveries show how adaptable the brain can be. Even damaged circuits can find detours. Who are we without our memories? Beyond the biology, anterograde amnesia raises deep questions about what makes us us. If you couldn't make new memories, would you still be the same person? If you can't remember your relationships, do they still exist? People like Henry Molaison and Clive Waring suggest that maybe identity isn't built solely on memory, but also on emotion, instinct, and connection. Even when facts vanish, the spark of self remains. Hope in plasticity. Not every case is dramatic, of course. Milder forms can follow concussions or short periods of oxygen deprivation. People may forget recent conversations or events, but recover over time. The brain's ability to rewire, called neuroplasticity, can sometimes restore partial function. It's one of the most encouraging discoveries in neuroscience. The mind, even when damaged, keeps trying to heal itself. Why the hippocampus matters. You might wonder why other parts of the brain can't just take over for the hippocampus. Some do, to a degree, but it's never quite the same. Think of memory as a concert. The hippocampus is the conductor, coordinating timing and harmony. Without it, the instruments still play, but the music loses its shape. The melody becomes fragments instead of a story. The thread of memory. So what have these lives taught us? That memory isn't a single organ or file cabinet. It's a living network. Different types of memory occupy different regions, and when one part falters, others often compensate in surprising ways. From HM to Clive Waring, these cases changed how science understands the mind. Their suffering became the foundation for nearly everything we now know about how humans remember, learn, and change. The miracle of remembering. When you think about it, memory itself is a quiet miracle. It's invisible, just patterns of electricity and chemistry, but it shapes everything about who we are. Every language you speak, every song that stirs emotion, every face you recognize, it all exists because of memory. Anterograde amnesia shows us what life looks like when that magic fades, and it reminds us how precious it is to hold on to even the smallest moments. So next time you remember a laugh, a sunset, or the warmth of someone's voice, pause for a second. Your brain just reached across time and brought that moment back to life. That's not something to take lightly. Because for people like HM or Clive Waring, each instant is fleeting. Their lives unfold in a loop of beginnings, where memory never lands long enough to stay. What anterograde amnesia teaches us. In the end, anterograde amnesia isn't just a medical mystery. It's a mirror. It reflects what it means to be conscious, to feel, and to exist across time. It teaches us that memory is more than storage. It's the thread that ties our moments together. And when that thread frays, what remains is the heart, the feeling, the spark, the will to keep living, even when every day begins again.